Hello, it's Father Rich coming to you for our next installment of How the Church has Changed the World here in our mini little kitchen dining area that's right off of the kitchen, but not the formal dining room next door that we've been in. We have a great picture here, it was here before I got here, of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. And that reminds us of that connection that between the Mass that we celebrate every Sunday and every day actually, and how that's a spiritual meal for us. The Last Supper being the first Mass ever, and kind of this parallel between the physical life and the spiritual life that St. Thomas Aquinas and our church has talked about for centuries, that just like we have physical needs to be born, to grow, to be nourished, and to be healed and needing medicine, we have the same spiritual needs that we see in the sacraments. And so we're always playing off of that physical spiritual parallel that we're trying to love others and help others with in our life as a church. And the person that we talk about today, the essay, is called, and they brought their sick to him. And kind of playing off of a similar parallel between the spiritual and physical, the man they're speaking about is Saint Basil the Great, who was a priest and bishop of the 4th century church. He was the founder of Eastern monasticism. Really amazingly, he is to the Eastern monasticism, maybe not founder, but they call him the father, so to speak, as Saint Benedict is to Western monasticism, and he's called the father of Western monasticism. But he was also a doctor of the church. So this book is actually in seminary, I got it, but it's called The 33 Doctors of the Church. Since then, there have been 3 more named in the last 15 years or so. So there's 36 doctors. And so they're not physical doctors, but they are theological doctors. We talked about this with St. Teresa of Avila. Individuals that added to helped develop the theology and doctrine and spirituality of our Catholic faith. And he was considered one of the 4 Eastern doctors, the 4 kind of original of the several early first centuries of the church. So really a significant group and well known, and he really, for his preaching and his conviction. His name means king, and they said it was kind of ironic because he had a very simple look to him, almost weakly and sickly and simple, but yet when you'd hear him speak and his passion of his soul, it had a way to influence people and really have an impact. So he had that kingly sense to him. So he was a doctor of the church, but also, and obviously the title of the essay mentions something I wasn't aware that he was well known for, was a great passion for helping the poor and the sick. And so he said, we need to build a new city. So he lived in modern or present day Turkey, Caesarea, and he got patrons to help support him in buying this land outside of Caesarea where he was bishop. And they started a place that would eventually be known as the Basiliad, or the new city, but it was technically Basil called it the Tokatrepheion, the house of the care of the poor. And it was really unheard of in this day. Remember, even hospitals were not heard of. We mentioned this is considered one of the first hospitals. So people could get help from doctors, especially those who are rich or could get a patron, the military, but the everyday person and the poor certainly would be given no medical attention. And he wanted to start a place that would provide that. And so this is the city that he built that was eventually called the New City, so to speak. And so this is the description of it by the essay writer. Imagine separate buildings for those who were afflicted by the plague, for those who were recovering, for the lepers whom no self-respecting pagan would go near, for women in childbirth, and for people who nearly starved with the famine. Imagine hospices for travelers and chapels for all wayfarers on the road of life. Imagine schools where a young man with no money and no prospects might learn of gainful trade, to be a mason, a tanner, potter, carpenter. And then imagine monks, hundreds of them, for whom this entire city is their monastery. And so they said all the different types of things going on here, and the monks helping the people better themselves, especially the poor, and obviously caring for the sick. And this is one of the great legacies of the church, the work we've done with the sick, the hospitals that we still see the church involved with to this day. Although we've talked about the challenges of that now with a lot of the public companies taking over the hospitals. But so Saint Basil was hugely significant in helping the church in two areas that in the 4th century that really he helped start that would influence the next 1600 years, and we still see it happening to this day. We've talked about them in different ways, but the hospitals and the care for the sick and for monasteries and the impact of the monastic life and monasteries on the development of culture. So it mentions here towards the end that one of the emperors in the mid-4th century during Saint Basil's life was Julian the Apostate. For a few years, even though Christianity had kind of taken hold in the empire, he rejected Christianity. So, and they called him the Apostate. But in the midst of that, he would say that, he said, the Christians take better care of the pagans, and he was considering himself and his people, the pagans, than the pagans do. And so there was this amazing, inspiring example of the Christians and how they cared for the sick and the poor. And that's something that I think the church every decade, every generation, every century has to be renewed in. And I have to think that's one of the ways that the church is going to be renewed in our 21st century, of really impacting the world again and seeing the ways that we care for those most vulnerable and most in need. So hopefully this can inspire us to learn more about this great doctor of the church, but also a physical person caring for the physical needs of the world around him, and to learn more about this unique figure and person that again, time after he lived would call him the Great, and call him a doctor of the church, call him one of the early fathers, and so we honor him in such a special way. So he is a huge way the church has changed the world. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day, and God bless.